This is Raven Dana, and thanks for tuning in to Walking Between the Worlds. I just discovered a few minutes ago that Class 1 that I thought I posted last week went to some obscure place. It did get posted, but not on my site. I did find it, I did fix the problem, and it is now up and running. So I'm sorry if you were looking for Weeks 1 class and it wasn't anywhere, but it's up now. And I'm about to do Class 2 of bird magic. And later on this afternoon, I will also post at least one meditation. So I'm sorry for the glitch. Apparently there's some gremlin in the system, and we know how that happens. Technology has a life of its own. All right, settling in now. Let's take a look at birds, class number 2. First of all, I just want to mention a particular bird. The fastest animal on the planet is the peregrine falcon. Now, it has previously been clocked. I went to a bird kind of a museum, and the information was that this bird has been clocked at 175 miles an hour when it's in its chase mode, right? It basically folds its wings and dive bombs its prey, whacks it out of the air, and then, has lunch. But when I did some further research, I discovered that it has more recently been clocked at 245 miles an hour in its descent. Incredible. So it is the fastest animal on the planet. And also, it has a cruising speed of 55 miles per hour, which I think is just astonishing. So this is just one of the many wonders of the magic of birds. Like there are birds that have incredible abilities to fly high in very thin air, birds that can see in the dark, birds that can do all kinds of things. So we're going to explore a little more of the mysteries of the bird world today. First of all, the language of birds. Birds, like humans, are actually capable of stringing sounds together in sentence-like phrases. And those phrases do impart meaning. It's more than just bird song. There of course is bird song, but there are bird calls that provide very specific information, not only for their own locals, their bird family, but for others in the woods, right? So it wasn't even imagined that birds had this capacity until science fairly recently discovered that birds have a very complex ability to provide detailed information. So the calls and warnings, for example, of honey eaters can contain as many as 96 elements in a single call. So they can convey very sophisticated information. An alarm may include what the predator is doing. Is it on land or in the air? How much of a threat is it? Is the suggestion, do we need to flee, or do we need to mob together and chase the predator out of our territory? And if the local birds are needed, they will show up and they will mob the predator. We know now that with humans, birds can actually visualize in response to a call. In wrens, for example, the number of notes indicates how far away a predator is. Crows are expert mobbers, by the way, and they'll even gang up on hawks. Gulls, too, will mob a predator, and they have the added bonus of being able to vomit on the predator over a fairly extensive distance. Even chickens have distinctly different alarm sounds that tell the flock if this is a flying threat or if this is a ground threat, like a raccoon. Now, more than 20 species of vertebrates understand and benefit from the alarm call of birds. So it's fascinating, right? So think about this, that the alarm can encode all of these different bits of information. What the predator is doing, how far away it is, how fast is the approach, whether or not we should flee or mob, It's just incredible to think about that if we're walking in the woods, we can glean a tremendous amount of information by understanding something about the language of the birds. And locally in your neighborhood, you probably have noticed, for example, the blue jays will make a very particular sound when there's a cat wandering around in the yard, a cat below. So again, these calls I want you to just like for a moment wrap your brain around that birds have this capacity to transfer very complex information to each other and also to the animals in their vicinity, right? So for example, if a vole or a rabbit is acclimated to the bird calls and there's a hawk flying over, they're going to hear that bird and they will flee. So it's really something. The more I learn about what birds are capable of. Now, whistling languages. This is related, of course, to bird calls. There are about 70 human whistling languages. Nobody's really sure where they started, but what we do know is this, that whistles, complicated human calls, have been used for a very long time, especially in areas that are mountainous or dense. So one reason is that a whistling sound will carry 10 times faster than the spoken word. So someone that is a sentinel high up in the mountains or high up on top of a building can whistle a tune, whistle a set of notes that again imparts information. They're coming, or there's a stampede, or there's an intruder that we don't know, or there's an army working their way across the front of the land. So again, this is fascinating because we don't often think about it. There are about 70 whistling languages, and they invariably end up mimicking the alarm calls of birds, which again, it's just a little fascinating bit of information as to how we and the world of birds are interrelated. Now, you probably know that birds like crows and ravens are tricksters, tricky, and they can do all kinds of things. But they're not the only birds that can pull off deception. Many, many birds have strategies and cooperate to pull off deception. And some birds, for example, a plover, will feign injury and drag a wing in order to lure a predator away from her nest. Blue jays will move their food stashes if someone's watching them hide their food. Blue jays will also pretend to move their stashes to confuse a bird that's watching them move their food. One of the greatest deceptors in the bird world are those who are mimics. We have 14 species that are master mimics. Among them are the magpie, the catbird, the mockingbirds, starlings, lyrebirds, blue jays. Mimics use the calls of other birds, and they also use the calls of predators. They also, many of them, know the calls of the local environment, which means they can mimic the sound of a car alarm. They can mimic the sound of a dog barking or a horse neighing. I mean, talk about strategies for deception. And it's not just that, they randomly parrot these sounds. They use them deliberately and for specific purposes to manipulate those in their environment. For example, lyrebirds are, lyrebirds. They are the most proficient mimics. And their mimic is intentional and strategic. And what you want to know about mimicking is that it requires a certain kind of vocal learning, and it engages mirroring cells in the brain that once thought this only happened in humans and primates, right? So the dongo bird can mimic as many as 45 different calls. Birds, animals, other sounds. So lyrebirds, dongos, these are incredible. They make excellent sentries, except when they're using their alarm calls to make another bird drop their prey, drop their meal so they can have a lunch, right? They can get a free lunch. So they even keep track of the tricks that they play on other birds. So if a bird has just caught a field mouse and they want it, they might mimic the call of a hawk and tell the bird to flee. So it will drop its meal and flee, and then they'll come and pick up its meal. But what you need to know is that they can also keep track of what call they use to trick whatever bird this is. So again, birds recognize individuals. So if they've used the false alarm call of a hawk a few times in the neighborhood, they're not going to use it on the same bird twice. They're going to use a dog barking, or they're going to use a different kind of predator, an owl perhaps. So you just want to know that they have these amazing capacities. Similarly, jays will imitate hawks and other raptors to get birds like grackles to drop their food so that they can have a free lunch. The jays are another type of bird that will imitate in order to have an advantage. And it's amazing. It's just amazing, the thought that goes into this. So a bird note. There is a bird called the oil bird, which is unique on the planet. This is the only bird species to have its very own genus. It is the only nocturnal fruit-eating bird in the world. They live in pitch black caves. They have spines on the sides of their beaks that look very much like the whiskers of cats, and that is the purpose they serve. They help them find things in the dark. They are the most light-sensitive vertebrates on the planet. Now, they also, in the pitch dark, use sound. So they use clicking sounds to echolocate, to navigate their space. And how they do it is that when the clicks bounce off things, it allows them to have a visual map of the territory, right? They create an auditory map. When in flight, their wings flap 5 times per second. When they're using their clicks, they click 5 times per second. Additionally, they have good sense of smell. They have big olfactory organs, so they can smell, and they use their whiskers to feel, and they have exceptional sight, and they have echolocation. Now, oil birds have also been used for both for their oil, for their their fat and their oil, to light torches in the past. Their oil is said to be extremely pure and that it can last a year without going rancid. Now, of course, in cultures that have utilized oil birds, they have not wiped them out. They have utilized the birds only in the front of the cave for food and oil, and they have still continued to thrive. So just, again, another absolutely astonishing part of the bird world. Birds and sight. Birds can see 10 times better than we can. They also can see much farther than we can see. And what's fascinating is that they can see a very wide range of ultraviolet colors that we have nothing in our human experience to compare it to. So if we're looking into a leafy area, we're mostly going to see a sort of a flat area of muted, slightly different colored greens, the leaves. Well, birds will not see it that way. Birds will see dramatically different individual leaves in high-res 3 dimensions. That's what helps them to find things in the canopy, to find what they need to find, whether it's they're finding fruit or they're finding prey, whatever they're doing. Each leaf stands out, where to us it's sort of a mass of mushed together green. Now, the importance of this, or the distinction in this, is really remarkable. So the sight of birds, because they can see electromagnetic light and all of its color spectrum, it's said to be the difference between when we had a black and white TV, then we went to color. It was like Wow. Okay. So the bird sight compared to our sight is like that. Like our sight is the black and white TV, and their sight is color. They see colors that we have no reference for. So they actually are seeing an entire other dimension of color, of a color spectrum. Now, also, some birds, like the wedge-tailed eagle, have specialized cells in the center of their eyes that act more like a telephoto lens. So it gives them the ability to see, for example, a field mouse hundreds of feet away. Wouldn't that be nice if we could have a telephoto lens in the middle of our eye? Birds are remarkable animals. Next time somebody tells you, you're a bird brain or that person's a bird brain, no, that is definitely a compliment. There are lots of different stories and superstitions and myths about birds. So, for example, it's said that to see an owl hunting in the day is a sign of misfortune. Many people believe that a cardinal is a sign of a visitation from a deceased loved one. Magpies have a whole little rhyme that goes, magpie is one for sorrow. It's believed that magpies are messengers of the future. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, and 7 for a secret never to be told. Now, if you see a magpie, by all means say hello, right? Tip your hat, say hello. This is a sign of respect to the world between the worlds and the messenger service that the magpies provide for us. A bird in the house in some cultures will mean a death or a loss, or in some cultures just a major change, a major transition, maybe a new job or something major. In many cultures, a black bird trapped in the house is a signal of death or birth. And interestingly enough, I just a couple weeks ago had a client tell me, oh my goodness, I came down the stairs, I couldn't imagine where this bird came from. There was a blackbird in my house. And it took me a really long time to get it out. I was worried. I know that there are superstitions around that. And, so she tells me this story. And we talk about it a bit, could be a birth, could be a death. And she called me the next day and told me, indeed, she discovered in that 24 hours following the bird event that she heard of someone in her family that was pregnant and someone who died. So again, coincidence? I don't know. I tend to think that these things have at least a bit of truth in them. And I remember my grandmother used to say that, right? That if there was a bird in the house. Now we lived, again, Yonkers, New York, tenement apartment, top floor, near the Hudson River. Once in a great while, there might be a bird in the house. And my grandmother was always very clear and very accurate as to what that message meant, what was being said to us. And she was, like, to my recall, she was always accurate. So fascinating. Ravens and crows, sometimes they are seen as, scary, mystical, portending bad events. But they're also, again, messengers between the worlds. Odin's ravens, thought and memory. In many traditions, they are not just messengers between the worlds, but they are guides of souls between the world of the living and the world of the dead. So ravens are also associated with goddesses who appear on battlefields, and she appears to her people in the form of ravens, right? Both for courage, and also if they are killed in battle, then they will be guided across to the other world by the ravens. So, ravens have been revered by sailors, especially Viking explorers, for their capacity to find land. So seeing a raven is a good thing. It means they can lead you to the land. There's land nearby. So again, this interesting sort of where ravens and crows live in this liminal space between worlds, both in the sense of the spiritual worlds, moving from life to death or death to life, but also actual land, being able to find land. I love that, right? Folklore also has it that the raven's sense of smell is so acute that it can smell death at an extreme distance, and that it can smell death before it comes. In Celtic and Norse mythology, ravens were always associated with deities that could shape destiny and reality. So sometimes the appearance of a raven is an opportunity to change course. It's an omen that the course you're on may not be the best one, but it's not saying something bad is going to happen. It's saying, hey, wake up, take a new direction. There's a choice point in your life. Perhaps you need to take a look at that. I have had really remarkable things happen with birds in my own life. Next time we're going to talk in more detail about vultures and ravens and other carrion eaters. But I just want you to know that, the relationship that we humans have with birds is very, very old. And to rely on our connection with the bird world is to extend our ability to understand things in the between space, in the spiritual area of our lives. I have the place I lived before I lived in this house. There were a lot of oak trees out behind the property, and I could see them out my living room window. And often there would be vultures swooping down. There would be vultures in those trees. And those vultures would come eye to eye with my window. I was on the top floor. They would come eye to eye with my window and look in and look at me. And I'm telling you, I have had the experience several times of making eye contact with a vulture, feeling this sense in my body, like they're gifting me something, going downstairs and finding a vulture feather. Now, if you've ever found, I will show you next time we're on the call. Vulture feathers, they're enormous. I mean, they're not blue jay feathers. They're vulture feathers. And it's not a frequent thing that they drop them places, right? So I had that happen 3 different times. I have some vulture feathers and they're beautiful. But also, to me, vultures, my personal mythology, is that vultures are the cleanup crew. They're the sanitation crew. They are the ones that come through and take out the trash and get rid of things that shouldn't, that if they stayed around would stink up my life. I always have welcomed vultures as a good thing. And I have even driving in a car when there are vultures flying over and I greet them, which I do, they will often fly right down over my car. There have been people with me when this has happened and they're just, it's spooky to them. Not spooky to me. They're just saying hello. And I love that rapport, that relationship that I have with vultures. And I'm just encouraging you to take a look at the birds in your neighborhood to see if there's any birds that you have a particular affinity for. Is it a cardinal? Are they the blue jays? Are they sparrows? I love sparrows. That's another type of bird that I have a very close bond with. So there's something there for you. There's something to be awakened within you as you continue on this journey of exploring the magic of birds. Because not only are they remarkable in their own right, but they really do firmly live in the realm between the worlds. And so let's explore that even more deeply next time around. And we'll take a look at some other birds and things they can do. Now we're also going to take a look at how birds can smell and how birds can hear. So we'll get deeper into the senses of birds. But we also want to explore our personal connection with the bird world. because it's there, and it's been there since the first people looked up and saw birds in the sky, or maybe threw a bit of their meal to them and let them and shared a meal. All right, until next time, go out and listen to the birds. My assignment for class 2 is to let yourself feel what bird or birds you may be personally connected to, and then go ahead and do a little research. Look them up, maybe put out some food that they would particularly enjoy. See if you can cultivate that connection. Sit quietly in your yard, or even in your car. On days when it's cold, I'll drive to the park, roll down my windows and sit quietly in my car and just watch the water of the lake, watch the birds, watch the animals, notice the skunk that runs across the grass. Just let myself participate in the marvelous world of nature, because after all, we rise from her and we go back to her. So let's have a little bit of time this week exploring our connection with the birds and their magic. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. This is Raven Dana, walking between the worlds. Bye now.